Item number 11.
Item number 11 is the department and committee reports, non-action items. We have one item, which is 11A, 2021 budget hearing number 4, original adopted budget, final direction by the Board of County Commissioners to Nikki Simmons, County Controller. Good morning.
Ms. Simmons.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, County Controller. Here this morning, we're going to have our 4th budget hearing, which is the final direction for the 2021 original adopted budget. So, like I said, this is the 4th hearing. We've already had 3. We presented the preliminary balanced budget. Then we had critical need hearings in October. Today we will decide on the direction for the final budget. And then on December 8th, we will bring forward to you the final package to vote on. So today we aren't taking any votes. What we're going to do is go through the operational strategy roadmap that I presented back in October and essentially make any changes to it at the direction of the commissioners. What I'll be looking for today is 3 head nods to make any changes from what we presented in October for the preliminary balanced budget. Before I start, I just want to remind everyone how this spreadsheet works. I'm going to try to make it a little bit bigger. That'll help. So essentially, this spreadsheet is a rolling spreadsheet. It starts with our available fund balance and then adds in our net revenues over expenditures that are in our base budget. So all of the base budget expenditures that are being carried forward from 2020 to 2021 are included in that gray line at the top. And then everything below is additions to that. And so I've gone through each of those in detail in previous budget hearings. So I don't think I need to do that today. So with that, I will just get started with asking for direction on any items that you would like to add or change or remove, and then I'll ask for head nods if there are changes.
Any changes? Any of you would like to address? Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on line 36, and perhaps it's just a refreshing of my memory about how this takes place. This is facility critical needs. There you go, up one more. So you'll notice, obviously, funding in 2021, but the question is about planning for subsequent years, 2022 and beyond.
Okay, Commissioner. The way that we approached this budget was back a year ago when we had a very large amount of facility critical needs. We split that into 2 years, and we had very targeted projects identified for 2020 and 2021, and we split that into 2 years. And then what we did is we put a base of $750,000 starting in 2022 and forward. So you'll see that on these 2 lines. The very targeted projects 2021 and then 2022 forward, just funding in the base budget to allow us to address those needs ongoing.
Okay, so that line 36 is the targeted needs.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Williams.
So it's my understanding, and sorry if I'm speaking out of line for Commissioner Gonzalez, that he wanted to consider adding an extra $15,000 towards code enforcement. I would be willing to support that.
Commissioner Gonzalez, is that something you were looking to do?
Yes, so I was going to bring that up. I have two requests. We'll start off with this one. Each year we have money that is in the code enforcement. It's the property cleanup fund. I believe currently it's funded at $60,000 for this current year or upcoming year, and I think a $10,000 or $15,000 increase would be appropriate. It's a low-cost fund that the code enforcement and planning department utilize, but based on the calls I get from residents, it's a very, very good return on investment from those community members that see their neighborhoods get cleaned up when we're forced to go in and do these cleanups. And so I do recommend either $10,000 or $15,000 increase for 2021 to that fund. Thank you, whichever is appropriate, but 15,000 would be my recommendation, but I'd be okay with 10,000 if some people wanted to put less to it. or not as big of an increase. Thank you.
Okay, and real quick, just to explain how this spreadsheet works, I mentioned earlier that this is a rolling balance. So right now there's 320,000 of one-time funds available. So if we add in size things. You know how you can never type when people are watching you? I'm like doing this live.
It's like doing math in public.
Streamed, right? So if we added in 15,000, that would add up to 75,000 for the 5-year, because that would be an ongoing increase. It's not just one-time funds that are being requested. So that would take 75,000 of that available fund balance, leaving 245,000. Are the commissioners in agreement with that? Is that something, and we can always remove later if that's where we want to go. We can see what this looks like.
It seems appropriate to me.
Okay.
And you can always change it next year if,
Always.
for some reason
Every
it's not
budget is
working.
changeable every year, and even mid-year with.
And I'll mention I have no objection to that as well.
Okay. I'm seeing all 5.
Commissioner Williams.
I'm trying to guide the budget process since I missed the budget hearings, I do have one other proposal for the remaining 245,000. It's not in my district, which breaks my heart. Normally, we do consider throwing that into roads, but I noticed in the community services presentation that the Rainbow Falls Bridge is 250,000. I think that we would be very wise to throw the 245,000 into a coronavirus reserve fund, at least until the end of May, for when we get the vaccine and we have the vaccine rollout, for if we need any extra assistance with that. I'm sure the federal government will come in and help, but I think that we need to always take care of, it's our own fiscal responsibility to have that money in reserve in case the federal government doesn't help. And we're conservative commissioners. If we get a point in time in the year where it becomes evident that we could use that for the Rainbow Falls Bridge, which is in Commissioner Vanderwerf's district, I think that that would be a project worth doing. I'd rather use it for the Fox Run bathrooms or the gazebo, but unfortunately those are a whole lot more expensive. So, and that might just be something totally out of the blue. I was just thinking about that at 3 a.m. in the morning last night.
That's when I do my best thinking too. So what I'm hearing you say is that for right now, you'd like to leave it in fund balance and not appropriate the funds.
Yes.
And have them available to appropriate in the future. And the idea would be for either COVID response or Rainbow Falls, but at this point, we wouldn't decide that. The board next April or May decide that.
Yes, and as the vaccine rolls out, we may need to do some extra special stuff, so I would propose that we hold it in reserve in case we need that for vaccine rollout.
Okay.
Sure. I'm good with that.
And I have no objection to that either. I am hopeful that CDOT will fund that bridge later, because it is their bridge that we're talking about, and we know that at this point in time they've chosen not to do that because of the state's budget shortfalls, as I understand it. But that might, possibly change in the next year or two. I think it is actually an excellent idea to be very cognizant of the fact that we may need a little more money for COVID response, and not necessarily placing it into a budget line item as was stated, but to be ready to maybe put a little bit more money into that that may be coming out of our general fund until the state determines from its special session, or until the feds determine a CARES Act 2 or something that might be able to assist us, because we know that coronavirus is going to be with us for several more months. I'm very hopeful that this challenge will be over by, no later than next year's summer, but it's hard to know that for sure. and we might find ourselves in a place where we've got to do something from an investment point of view to continue to help keep county employees safe, to support our businesses, all of these kinds of things. And so I think that's a reasonable item for us to keep in mind between now and until maybe we get additional help from the state or the feds. So thanks.
So possibly just putting it into reserve in case we need it for COVID.
And so, Commissioner, how this would work is any unspent funds at the end of each year would be held in operational reserves available to appropriate by the board. So just by not spending it, it would go into reserves.
And that's probably, to me, would seem the conservative thing to do would be to just stick it in reserve in case.
Commissioner Brimmer.
Quick question. And is there a threshold for which an item that would spend reserve funds comes back to us?
Yeah, so any funds, anytime we spend into fund balance, it comes to the board. And when you're going to spend into fund balance, it's actually a regular item. It's not even on consent because adding to the actual overall deficit or addition to the fund requires an affirmative vote of the board.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Your Commissioner Gonzalez say he. Oh.
Yep, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a concern about one issue on the budget, which I've mentioned before. I do personally recommend moving I don't know if it was $3 million or $3+ million proposed allocation for gap widening toll lane to instead go to the public works budget for our county roads and infrastructure maintenance. I-25 widening is indeed a very important safety improvement, but I don't believe it needs our additional funds for completion. And then I've got a couple additional reasons. The original $7.5 million we've already allocated was approved by the public by a vote. So I believe that if we are to provide additional funds for the project, it makes sense to do so again by a vote of the people. Additional funding is not mandated nor needed to complete the project. At every public meeting that first year where CDOT and the commissioners were present, I at every public meeting stated on the record that there was no guarantee or mandate above the original $7.5 million already allocated. CDOT senior personnel at those meetings at no time ever attempted to correct my comments or assertions. Indeed, our own staff and attorneys have indicated no additional funds were ever guaranteed. Finally, the county roads, or our county roads, and our public works department are in more need of these funds than the state, I believe. Indeed, the state over these past 4 years have passed more and more unfunded mandates to counties, forcing us, El Paso County, to pay more and more of what used to be their costs. These unfunded mandates come to millions of dollars in additional costs to El Paso County each year and ongoing. I do not believe we should reward the state with scarce county dollars that could be better used on our county maintained roads. So thank you, and I request that that be funded to Public Works Department.
Any other comments on that? I just say I don't agree. I appreciate where the vice chair is coming from here, and we do have a lot of needs moving forward in the county, but there isn't any single bigger construction project or road project that's vital to the citizens of El Paso County than the expansion of I-25. It's a significant public safety issue. We had a section of highway that has not been expanded since I believe it's 1962 when I-25 was originally constructed, and it has shoulders that just simply aren't safe. It puts every time that one of our first responders affects a stop on I-25 or responds to a stop on I-25, they put their lives in jeopardy. And it's resulted in the death over the last few years of a couple of Colorado State troopers. This is a public safety, and we've had citizens that have been off the side of the road that just weren't able to get over far enough and ended up losing their lives in traffic accidents because the stretch of road just simply isn't safe. I think, this has been a big project, $350 million project overall. It's taken funds from all different sources in order to get it done. And I think if people remember, we worked pretty hard on this, about 3 years ago, I think, to come up with the funding to do this. And at the time, I remember even the mayor of Colorado Springs, John Suthers, was saying, it's going to be 10 years before this project gets off the ground. We're not going to be able to get it done. 10 years before this thing gets started. And you know what? We in the county said that's not acceptable. It needs to be done now. It needs to be done for the safety of our citizens. It needs to be done for the safety of our first responders. It needs to be done for our economy, and it needs to be done just for the overall good of our region. And at the time, the county took a significant leadership role in making sure that project got done. And it went from a start date for 10 years out in the future to a start date from a year in the future. And now it's moving along, and it's moving along famously. I think it's the right thing to do to put those funds forward. I think if we don't put those funds forward, we won't see partnership opportunities with the state and the Colorado Department of Transportation in the future. This is the right thing to do. It's a necessary thing to do, and I would not support removing that from the line item. Commissioner Williams.
I can understand Commissioner Gonzalez's opinion. I do agree with Commissioner Waller. While I wasn't on the board at the time of the signing of this grant, it is a big public safety issue. I consider it a contract with the federal government. I look at all of the amazing amount of partnerships we have with grants from the federal government, whether it be from DHS to our sheriff's office. I worry about damaging El Paso County's reputation. I think that the economic benefit we are going to derive when this project is finished, people are tired of getting caught in the traffic going up I-70 into the mountains. They will come down to the Broadmoor. They will come down to our Olympic Museum. They will come down to the Air Force Academy. I truly believe that the economic development that we are going to derive from having this project finished is going to outweigh the tremendous amount of pain in this whole project, because it's been a tough issue for previous boards as well as this board. And I am not happy how it was done. I do wish Douglas County would have taken the lead. And they didn't. But instead, we took the lead. We jumped ahead of all of the I-25 North project, Fort Collins to the Wyoming border. They've been working on that for 15 years, and we jumped ahead of them and snuck in. And I don't want, the final thing I will say is the next project up on the list is Powers and Research. That is in my district. There is no way I'm going to damage the potential. It is a shovel-ready project. If we have the money, as soon as the CDOT is awarded the money from the governor to do it, it's starting. It is a dangerous situation every day for high school students, and I will not go back on a commitment that a former commissioner made to the federal government to risk losing my district's powers and research funding, period. And so I would disagree with Commissioner Gonzalez. I understand totally where he's coming from, though.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll agree with my colleagues. I always deeply concerned about the second $7.5 million, but I do know that our leadership in the county did everything it could to negotiate in good faith with CDOT and was able to bring that second $7.5 million down to a lower number of continued investment from the county. I feel at this point it's important to get this behind us and to look forward and to go forward. I continue to object to the toll lanes. I feel like the state is going to generate much more revenue from those from the toll lane than they will need to do maintenance on that part of the highway. So at this point, I will also support keeping this money in this line to get it past us. We did negotiate this in good faith with CDOT. We were able, our senior staff was able to make some progress with that, just not able to completely negotiate all of the $7.5 million. And what I think we need to do is go forward and then continue to look for new opportunities with CDOT to encourage them to maintain their roads in our communities and also to expand them because we have an expected amount of massive growth in this community here in El Paso County, and we are going to need their support going forward to continue to expand those roads. And I'd like to continue to work that partnership with them. I can say, and I think this is important, notwithstanding my issues and concerns about this particular project, it is going to generate an enormous amount of value for the community. And I believe that CDOT has done other things in our community that we can be very thankful for. And there are several of those projects where they've worked with us in partnership. So at this point, I think it's time to get it behind us, and I will at this point support retaining the $3 million and the $500,000 in 2021 and 22, and look forward to continuing our work with CDOT because we need them to keep working on growing and expanding our roads and also maintaining the current ones we have. We still have several CDOT road challenges, and we will need their support in order for us to get through those. So that will be my position on this budget line. Thank you.
And I just say finally, and I assume Commissioner Bremer did not have anything to say on this. I just say finally this, in order for us to do any of these transportation projects in the future, it takes partnerships. It takes partnerships, in some cases with private entities. It takes partnerships with other local governments. It takes partnerships with the state. It takes partnerships with the federal government. That's just how these things have to get done. Maybe there are some people out there that think that that's not the way it should happen, that the federal government should be solely responsible for federal roads, state government should be solely responsible for state roads, and local government should be solely responsible for local roads. But it's just not the model we have. It's not how we do it. We're working on a bunch of local roads, got a $18.3 million grant from the federal government to work on those local roads. Now, we pay federal taxes, and some of those transportation dollars should come back to us. But in order for us to be able to grow our community in the right and correct and responsible way, we got to be able to engage in these partnerships. I think that, there are things that are done on this partnership that none of us like. I don't think anybody on this board is happy that there's going to be a toll lane associated with that transportation project, which is the source of a lot of the consternation, I think, from the community. And I don't want to speak for Commissioner Gonzalez, but be willing to bet that that's a big source of his consternation. I get it, and I understand it, and I appreciate it tremendously. But at the end of the day, we have a need, and we have a significant public safety need that needs to be fixed for our community, and it's our community that benefits from this. A lot of this stretch of road is in Douglas County, which they, again, I agree, whoever said it, wish they would have come forward with a little bit more of the money, but the reality is 80% of the traffic on that road's coming to El Paso County. And as home prices continue to grow in the Denver metro area, there are going to be more and more and more people that are living in El Paso County and commuting to Denver for work every day. And I think we have an obligation, a responsibility to keep those citizens as safe as possible and to keep the first responders that protect those citizens as safe as possible as well. And I think this is the right thing to do. So no 3 head nods to have that removed. Anything else on the budget? All right, seeing none, I think you've got good direction.
Okay, just to recap, the only change that we're going to make between the preliminary balanced budget and the original adopted budget is the addition of $15,000 a year to planning and community development for code enforcement cleanup projects. So we will be back on December 8th with a final pretty package for the commissioners to vote on. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Sure.